How do you want to be remembered? When I die, I want not to be remembered for how much cash I made, the long hours I spent at work, how much time I spent on Facebook. I want to be remembered for trying to help people. Did I always get it right? No. I guess this is where this show could get interesting. What I explore and share in these episodes, I didn't learn at university from my parents, I lived it. Now let's get on with the show. Hey team, recently I had the chance to complete 2 bucket list activities. One, I walked on Hadrian's wall, the wall built by the uncle of the very man's texts that changed my life. I'm not a religious person, but I am spiritual. My mum was a Buddhist, so I've always had a spiritual side of me. And honestly, the moment that I walked on that wall, I felt something overwhelm my body. I don't believe in anything like that, but something did overcome me. So I'm waiting for my superpower to show. Please, if you spot it or hear it during the show, do let me know. My second bucket list activity was visiting an observatory, Kielder Observatory to be more specific, which is set within the largest dark sky park in Europe. We can get you there over at BML Travel Company, so do hit us up. But, on the sky, I have this thing that you've probably heard of, a term called cosmic perspective. It pretty much means when I'm suffering or anxious, I meditate on how small we are, and then it feels less big or less overwhelming. For example, I bought Daisy a piece of space rock when we were at the observatory. That piece of space rock is 4.6 billion years old. It puts into context me being annoyed about whatever small shit I'm getting annoyed about. And on the topic of suffering, feeling anxious or overwhelmed, we're nailing those puppies on today's show. Often I get asked how I'm able to find a positive outlook on things, even the worst of things. I want to promise you it's not always been like this, and it often still takes me time to work and process things. But these things don't consume me nearly as much as they once would. I now have a disposition available to me that I didn't have before. In today's episode, I'm serving you up with a 2,000 plus year old philosophy that can help anyone process things better and more generally become a better person. You know I love Stoicism, right? But so do organisations like NASA, the All Blacks and the NFL. In addition to familiar faces like Camila Cabello, Elon Musk, Matthew McConaughey, who's a GOAT, Tom Brady, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and last but not least, Tim Ferriss. I could have went on, the list is genuinely endless. And of course, a regular feature on the show, and indeed on today's show, you can expect me to throw in some words I've learned and can barely say. Today's is neuroplasticity, almost. Just to bring in some science so you know that I'm not completely full of shit when I'm trying to explain to you all these things that have helped me over the last years. And of course, as always, today I'm going to round you off with some of those things, some tangible, bite-sized, actionable tips that are so bite-sized they'll take you moments to do, but they have potential to improve your life by 50,000%. Okay, I made that stat up. I'm very much not a statistician, but again, I am Exhibit A. My life changed. I went from very much not enjoying it to recording a podcast and telling you all how I got here today, enjoying it significantly more. So, my man, Marcus, I walked on his uncle's wall the other week and was possessed by some kind of supernatural spooky power. A super interesting guy, and I shared in episode 2 how I read his journals, meditations, when I was going into and coming round from my leg surgery. The thought of someone reading my journals in 2,000 years' time, I'm not even convinced that whatever robots are knocking about then will be able to apply my philosophy, but you never know. But Marcus Aurelius is often remembered as one of the 5 good emperors. He's celebrated by many and very much from me for his Stoic philosophy. Meditations was his reflections written during times of war, plague, and personal loss, reminding himself in times of need the practical guidance he'd learned along the way on navigating suffering. Much like I regurgitate this to you today. One of the biggest reasons I wanted to open up a bit on Marcus today was how pertinent it felt with being on Hadrian's wall last week. And just to give a bit of context to Hadrian and Marcus and stuff, the Emperor Hadrian's mentorship really shaped Marcus's philosophical approach to life. From an early age, Marcus was groomed for leadership, exposed to both the grandeur and the burdens of power. Hadrian encouraged Marcus's education in Stoicism and Greek philosophy and really laid the groundwork for the young emperor's resilience. Hadrian actually had his adopted son Antonius adopt Marcus at 17, making Hadrian his uncle to ensure a route to the throne was open for him. Wild pressure for a 17-year-old. Imagine how that would end in today's world. Marcus's lifelong exposure to hardship and responsibility formed the foundation of his writings and overcoming suffering and living with virtue. Marcus's philosophical outlook was not abstract, it was a toolkit for enduring life challenges, a toolkit that I use every day today. And that's why I felt it important to bring that with me today when trying to help explain how a 2,000 plus year old philosophy might just be able to help you navigate the challenges that you face in daily life. You know, I love to bring a book with me into these shows, and actually, today's show allows me to bring my favourite book of all time. And I know I say these things change my life, but genuinely, the little black book that I read from at the end of each show, the first excerpt is from that book. So, and as well, so much so, I've actually got it tattooed on my wrist as well. I recommend this book at least once a week and quote it to people or send them, podcast overviews of it every other day. It's the best book out there for today's challenges, in my opinion, and I urge you to go and get it. Go and get it right now. It is The Obstacle is the Way. The Obstacle is the Way builds on Marcus's teachings about turning adversity into advantage, and the book itself is structured around some key themes: our perception, action, and will. The author, Ryan Holiday, uses historical examples from Amelia Earhart to John D. Rockefeller and everything else along the way to show how obstacles have been transformed into opportunities throughout history. And he has in recent weeks updated it, bringing his take on it into the present day. In my opinion, the core idea of Ryan Holiday's book comes directly from Meditations, particularly Marcus Aurelius' phrase, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." What stands in the way becomes the way. That is as timeless and practical advice as I've ever received. A perhaps more memorable anecdote from that book that blows my mind whenever I think about it, and also further emphasizes that the obstacle is indeed the way, is how Thomas Edison responded to his laboratory burning down. You might have heard of that guy, pretty famous. Edison reportedly called his son over to witness the spectacle, saying, "Go get your mother and all her friends. They'll never see a fire like this again." Edison embraced the loss with composure and used it as an opportunity for reinvention. Despite the destruction of his life's work, he saw the fire as a chance to start afresh. I would like to give thanks to today's show sponsors, Being Well Travel Company. Hit them up across all the usual places to get expertly planned trips, deals and experiences around the world that will leave you feeling well. Now, back to the show. Holiday uses the story to underscore the Stoic principle of focusing on what we can control, our response to external events rather than the events themselves. Edison's reaction shows how we can view obstacles not as losses, but as opportunities for growth. For the avoidance of doubt that this actually works, you know I love to prove to you what I'm saying isn't absolute tripe. After the fire destroyed much of Thomas Edison's factory, he continued to work on several different innovations, despite the setback. One of the most notable creations he developed shortly after the disaster was an improved version of the alkaline storage battery, used today for electric vehicles, for example. These insights, along with many more in this book, align directly with Marcus Aurelius' teachings and offer us modern, applicable strategies for navigating suffering. I'd strongly urge you to check it out if you haven't already. I'll link the new 10th anniversary edition in today's show notes for you. You also know that I love to bring some neuroscience into these shows, Neuroscience supports the Stoic principle of building resilience through hardship. Who knew these guys were so advanced beyond their years 2,500 years ago? Andrew Huberman's recent research on stress and the brain shows how practices like cold exposure and controlled breathing can build mental toughness, which aligns with the Stoic practices of facing discomfort head on. Huberman's findings relating to neuroplasticity, nailed it, and resilience suggest that deliberate exposure to controlled stress, such as cold showers or challenging physical exercise, yes please, can help reshape the brain to better handle future adversities. That's right, guys, reshape the brain. I mean, having a cold shower has the opportunity to reshape the brain. Bonkers. This mirrors Marcus Aurelius's belief in facing challenges directly to strengthen character. I genuinely believe that that's what I've done. I'm a fundamentally different person at my very core than I was before I started on this Stoic journey. Another science-based topic I want to cover is brought by Donald Robertson. You may remember me mentioning his book a few episodes ago. I think it was the Memento Mori episode, How to Think Like a Roman Emperor. Donald is actually a former cognitive behavioral therapist. Those that know me will know that I'm a huge proponent of therapy, particularly talking therapies, particularly cognitive behavioral therapy. If anyone wants to bounce on my experiences with therapy, please do reach out. Let's talk. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Much like this show, I'll just tell you how it's been for me and how it's helped, or the challenges that I've found. Anyway, such a great tool. But back to Donald's book. Donald is a therapist and also a Stoic author. Modern cognitive behavioral approaches are very much intertwined with Marcus Aurelius's and the Stoic wisdom. Techniques like cognitive reframing, so changing how we perceive challenges, echo Marcus's lessons on controlling our reactions to suffering. As shown in the book I mentioned earlier, Robertson's work on applying Stoicism to contemporary life, particularly in managing stress and emotional challenges, can be seen right throughout both his work and Marcus Aurelius's work. Now, my favourite part of the show. Practical tips to send you on their way. Tips that help change my life so I can give them to you in the hope you execute them and they have the same effect. I'm not coming on here asking you to do something wild. I just want to be super clear. I have 3 to share today. Between you and I had 6. So if you want to know more, please do ping me a message. I wanted to keep it clean and simple for you, as these ones are really low maintenance but are going to make a huge difference. So, in at number 1, a technique called cognitive reframing. This is about turning obstacles into opportunities. We've already discussed Marcus Aurelius's meditations and modern psychology. Reframing hardships as opportunities for growth is a surefire winner. Remember Thomas Edison. And I can also use me as an example. At the last hurdle of a goal I'd worked 1 entire year for, 5 days a week, sometimes 6, I tore the cartilage in my hip and couldn't complete my final hurdle in the way I had originally planned. Seen that as a positive, the solution would mean that my family could run with me, despite being in real pain. Another injury, this time to my rotator cuff the other week, I chose to think that this was a positive. A man that wasn't working out, trying to be better for his kids, wouldn't have gotten that injury, sitting on the couch, lazing about eating shit. These injuries can now be seen as a chance to improve mental strength and patience, for example. And please note, I didn't really look at it from that perspective until I was prepping for this podcast. I'm thankfully at a stage whereby this stuff starts to land quite naturally, most of the time. You could write down some recent challenges and identify the lessons that they offer. This practice of cognitive reframing helps shift focus from the pain to the benefits of enduring it. If you decide to go big and delve into childhood and start to look for lessons there, one point that I would note is that I'd be a strong proponent of doing a more detailed exercise like a childhood reflection with the support of a professional. In at number 2 this week, And remember, these 3 have made it out of a shortlist of 10 to 6 to 3. So they better be good. You can let me know. Anyways, number 2, voluntary discomfort. And I think this one is my favourite. Building resilience through daily discomfort practices. Inspired by Marcus Aurelius and Andrew Huberman's research, engaging in voluntary discomfort such as cold plunges, fasting, or intense exercise seemingly prepares your mind to face bigger challenges. This Stoic practice of introducing discomfort helps build resilience, making you more capable of handling unforeseen suffering. Taking a cold plunge each morning helps me beat my mind in my first and second decisions of the day. My first is beating it to get out of bed at 4:30 in the morning, and second is getting a freezing cold plunge in my back garden. I'm showing my mind that I'm in charge. I call the shots, and most of the time, your mind is actually the one calling the shots. This practice has the added advantage of aiding my physical recovery, but I do it almost entirely for my mental health. It gives me clarity, happiness, and the preparedness for any shit the day has to throw at me. Lastly, and man, this was a tough one. Lastly, what am I going to go for? Meditating on impermanence. I said this week to a friend, actually. That's why I've selected it. But everything is temporary. It's about the ability to find peace in the fleeting struggles of the day. Marcus Aurelius frequently meditated on the transient nature of life. This practice can be a daily reflection where you remind yourself that both pleasure and pain are temporary. I often say to myself, never get too high or too low. It's a lesson that I've learned the hard way many times. By spending 5 minutes each day focusing on the impermanence of your problems, you gain perspective that helps you navigate suffering with a sense of calm and purpose. That brings us almost to the end of today's episode. We've explored how embracing suffering, both through Stoic philosophy and modern-day science, can help us grow stronger and more resilient. From the wisdom of Seneca and Marcus Aurelius to the neuroscience insights of Andrew Huberman, we've learned that facing challenges head-on can lead to powerful personal transformations. I hope I've succeeded in proving to you that this crazy philosophy that I've inked on my body and that I use as an operating system for my life can be of some use to you. Remember, it's about how you choose to respond to life's hardships that shapes your future. So, as you go about your week, think about one challenge you can approach with a Stoic mindset and see what difference it makes. I'd love to hear your stories. Share your experiences, tag me in a post, ping me a DM, whatever it is. I really love when you guys get in touch. The best reflections could be in with a chance of winning a £100 voucher for your next Being Well travel adventure from our podcast sponsors, Being Well Travel Company. Make sure to subscribe on Spotify and YouTube and follow us on social media. But before I go, becoming somewhat of a tradition. When I was bedridden with a foot-long laceration in my knee post-surgery, I wanted to bring some value to my family. During that time, I started a practice. I started to write everything I'd learned and was learning in a book for my kids. It's from that book that I share this quote with you to end today's podcast. The author is Ryan Holiday, and the book is The Obstacle is the Way. What is up to us? What is not up to us? And what is up to us? Our emotions, our judgment, our creativity, our attitude, our perspective, our desires, our decisions, our determination. This is our playing field. And what is not up to us? The weather, economy, circumstances, other people's emotions or judgments, trends, disasters, etc. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep being well. Big love.